Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're very well tonight. My volume is a little bit low. I'm going to try and fix that. So let's see who's on the stream tonight. We have, let me see, FSM is the dog. FSM certainly is the dog. We have Killer. Great to see you, Killer. Hope you're well. We also have Lost in France. Great to see you once again. Raven 1983 Witch. Great to see you. Strange Love the Doctor. Great to have you on. Claudius. Great to see you. Arl. Great to have you on. Audrey, great to have you on. Hope you're well today. FSM, I said hello already. We have Maria, great to have you on. Hope you're well in the Netherlands. Lydia, great to see you. Zoe Castles, great to have you on again. Dano, great to see you, Dano. Hope you're fine. We also have... I have a... One moment. Alert box. I should put it up here. Okay. We have Valerio. Thank you so much, Valerio. Greetings from Rome and Milan. Yay. Thank you so much for that super chat. Very kind of you, Valerio. Hope you're fine in Rome and Milan. I'm not sure how you're managing to stay in two places at one time. Maybe you're a what do you call it? An electron. Isn't an electron can be in two places at the one time or something like that. Great to see you. Hope you're well tonight. We have Buxton. Great to see you, Buxton. Conservator, Dano, Gene T. Political conscious correctness is a means of control. Okay. We have, let me see. Chatty Rat, great to see you, Chatty. Tilly's Man, great to have you on. Excuse me, we have Broken Curtain. Sorry that your curtain is broken. I love the names that appear up here. We also have Ellie, great to see you. Well, we're up to 353 viewers already. Okay, I can't say hello to everyone, otherwise we wouldn't get through the stream. CGM and so many others. So I want to say massive welcome to everyone who's on tonight. Thanks for coming on. Remember to smash the like button if you haven't already. I wasn't able to catch up on all of the Brexit news, so I saw part of Lord Frost's speech. I didn't see it all, so I'm going to try and cover as much of it as I can today. To say I'm pissed off is putting it lightly, because I'm really concerned about what's going to happen now. You had Brexiteers like Lord Frost and Boris Johnson and others a couple of years ago saying, look, there's nothing to worry about in Northern Ireland. Stop complaining about Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is not important. We have to focus on fishing and we have to focus on other things. And Northern Ireland was pretty much forgotten. Whenever it was brought up, the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg would say, oh, well, you know, we can, don't worry about Northern Ireland. We can fix the solution with an electronic border. And then, of course, when Jacob Rees-Mogg was asked about, can you provide us an example of an electronic border somewhere in the world, he came up with nothing. Or he would talk about, was it Sweden and Finland? Or maybe it was Sweden and Norway, I don't remember. Yeah, a completely different situation. And even if there was a border, it's nothing related. It's not, there's no connection with, you know, the situation in Northern Ireland. No relation whatsoever. Ken, thanks so much for that super chat. Thanks so much, Ken. No comment, but great. Thanks so much for the support. So Northern Ireland was basically forgotten until about last year, and then they said, oh, we need to start thinking about Northern Ireland. Or not last year, in 2019. And volume is a bit low. Okay, I think I know what's the matter. Sorry about that. Where is my audio? No, not there. Whoops. No, not that. No, where the hell is the setting? Oh, apologies. No. One moment. Why can't I adjust it there? Let me see. I've been having some problems with the audio. To buy a new audio button. Let me see. Maybe it's here. No, that's just my audio for the. Damn it. Thanks so much for that super chat. Hi Max, volume is a bit low. Thanks so much to Hert. Thanks so much to Night Raven. I'm doing my best to fix it. Damn it, where is it? Okay, maybe that's a little bit better. Let me check. Is that a little bit better? Yeah, I think that seems to be slightly better. Shout, maybe that's the solution. Volume is okay. All right, okay. Hammers fix this. Hedgehog Legs, thanks. Wow, thanks so much for that super chat. I can hear you okay. So I think I may have fixed the audio, but maybe not. I'll just move much closer to the microphone. Stop, you can be heard. A touch of frost with a fist. Thanks so much for those super chat, guys. So I hopefully I can speak now. So back to Lord Frost and the Brexiteers. I'm really concerned. Too loud. Okay. You can turn down your volume if I'm too loud. I can't turn myself up. Much louder. Okay, let's move on. Now, as I said, they were ignoring Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland was always an issue. The European Union said, look, we need to care about Northern Ireland. We need to make sure that the Good Friday Agreement is protected. And the response from Brexiteers is, yeah, there's nothing to worry about, nothing to worry about. And now we had Lord Frost today issue this speech where he says, we're going to need a new protocol. Even though the one I signed back in 2019 was perfect. Fantastic. It was an oven-ready deal. But now we need to throw it in the bin because it's not fit for purpose. Now, of course, and I've said this on numerous occasions, Frost and the Brexiteers never actually indicate what the problem is. They never say, this is the problem. They talk on a political level. They say it's undermining the Good Friday Agreement, but they never actually give any examples of how. They're saying that it no longer respects the Northern Ireland's place within the UK, but they don't explain how. So I'm not going to show you this entire speech. It's 12 minutes long, okay, so, and you would probably kill me. But I want to show at least the first part of it because right off the bat, it's going bad. Jerry, thanks so much for that super chat. Max, can you comment on the fuel crisis in the EU versus the UK? Brexiteers are saying it's worse in the EU and France. Thanks for all your work. Thanks so much for that super chat, Jerry. So I'll just answer Jerry's question and then I'll jump to this. The fuel crisis. So fuel prices are going up all over Europe and all over the world, it seems, especially here in Europe because we're dependent on Russian gas. But because the EU is able to negotiate as a bloc, it's able to get better prices than if individual member states were to negotiate directly with suppliers in Russia. Because of that, the European Union is able to get better prices for member states. Now, there are different prices around in respective countries because of taxes and things like that. But I'm not an expert on this, but generally the idea being is if you negotiate as a bloc, you're going to get better prices than if you negotiate as an individual member state or individual country. And what's happening is the UK obviously is outside the EU. It doesn't have the same negotiating power. And that's part of the reason why the UK is paying more for energy. Now, when it comes to the petrol stations, there aren't enough heavy goods vehicle drivers available to deliver fuel to depots and to deliver fuel to petrol stations. I also pointed out that I think, and I'm not sure if this is true, because this was an issue raised some months ago, and I don't know if it's still valid, but there was a concern that there aren't enough chemicals available to be used in the refinery process, and the chemicals have to be imported from abroad, and you're talking about massive quantities of chemicals. They need to be imported by heavy goods vehicle drivers, heavy goods vehicles, so it's necessary also to rely on that, and that could be impacting it as well. But this was all actually predicted under Operation Yellowhammer, which was a plan some time ago written up by the British government itself, under making predictions of a no-deal Brexit scenario, and they made predictions about fuel shortages and things like that. And of course, it was dismissed as Project Fear by Brexiteers, but now we're seeing it. We have. Let me make sure I didn't miss any super chat. David, thanks so much for that, super chat, David. Northern Ireland will demonstrate to the rest of the UK the advantage of being in the single market and the customs union, and it is exactly doing that. Yes, agree 100%. Northern Ireland is the Northern Ireland Protocol is mitigating the damage of Brexit when it comes to Northern Ireland. What's happening with Northern Ireland is that, while it used to rely on Great Britain for goods, now it's relying on the Republic of Ireland and the EU, the rest of the EU. It has adapted. It has adapted to its new state. And Brexiteers in Northern Ireland are not happy with that. They're not happy that they're able to get the goods that they need. They're not happy that there aren't fuel shortages and queues at petrol stations. They would like to have that, it seems. Of course they wouldn't, but they are ignoring the benefits of the protocol because it doesn't suit them, because they would like to get rid of the protocol. Now, many of the unionists in Northern Ireland, I'm not saying all of them, many unionists of course voted against Brexit, but I'm talking about the likes of the DUP, voted for Brexit, campaigned for Brexit, and they wanted to put a border. They were under the belief that, okay, if we leave the European Union, what's going to happen is the EU and the UK will put a border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. We'll get our hard border there, because they don't care about the consequences of that. And they didn't realise, or maybe they hoped, that the UK government would be on their side. And the UK government were not on their side. The UK government realised that they can't tear up the Good Friday Agreement. The Northern Ireland's situation is demonstrating, in a sense, what Britain would have looked like, to a certain extent, if it had remained within the single market and the customs union. Not really many changes taking place. If the UK had left the European Union and stayed within the single market and the customs union, which was a possibility, it would be like Northern Ireland. Now, of course, it's not the same as membership, nowhere near as good, because you're a rule taker. You're not able to actually decide how the single market works, because you're no longer a member of the European Union. But that's would have been a version of Brexit. Problems were predicted as we sold reserve tanks. Yes. FSM is the dog. Yes, problems were predicted. It was always dismissed as, Project Fear, scaremongering. It's not going to happen. Believe in Brexit. You remember that? Remember where you had to believe in Brexit? If you believed in Brexit, it would work. DC, thanks so much for that super chat. I almost missed it. It's some say Irish reunification will happen before Scottish independence. The speech today, from what I've seen of it, I'm really starting to think it's an attempt by Boris Johnson and Frost and the Brexiteers to jettison Northern Ireland. They want... their way of getting out of this would be to have a border poll. If there was a border poll, putting more pressure on Northern Ireland, putting Northern Ireland in a more difficult position, will force more and more people to say, look, maybe Northern Ireland will be better off as part of the European Union. Now, how does Northern Ireland become part of the European Union? Through a united Ireland. Because businesses in Northern Ireland would prefer to maintain the protocol. The majority of people in Northern Ireland understand the value of the protocol. It's a small minority that want to throw it in the bin. So why should that small minority dictate the future of Northern Ireland? They weren't democratically elected. A lot of these people who are against the protocol are not allowed. I'm not talking about the members of the DUP. I'm talking about the loyalist paramilitaries, loyalist groups who have no representation, and they're marching in the streets and they're protesting against it. And Lord Frost and the Northern Ireland Secretary met with these people. Why? Why did they meet with these people? These people represent... they're not democratically elected. Who the hell do they represent? Drug dealers and criminals. That's, it seems, who they represent. And they're not too happy with the protocol because it's stopping the flow of drugs moving from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, where a lot of them make a lot of their money from. So, sorry, I didn't answer your question. So, some saying reunification will happen before Scottish independence. That's a difficult question to answer, because reunification isn't going to happen as many people imagine it to happen. It's not going to be, turning a key or pressing a button or something like that, or it's moving from one day a non-United Ireland and the next day United Ireland. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a slow, gradual process. And in a sense, you could almost say that it's already happened it's already happening because Northern Ireland is moving further away from Great Britain. And that's not because of the protocol or what the protocol wants to do. The protocol is a consequence of Brexit. And if Brexit did not happen, Northern Ireland would be as it was before. And businesses, as I said, businesses and people in Northern Ireland understand that, look, Great Britain voted for Brexit. Well, England voted for Brexit. England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland didn't want Brexit. They voted against it. But it has been inflicted upon them. And they want out. It seems that, the worse Brexit becomes for Great Britain, the more support there is for getting out of the Union in some form in Northern Ireland, I'm pretty sure. Thanks for that super chat. Thanks, FSM is the dog too. So I hope I didn't... Let me just check. Oh, I have some more. We have Cole. Thanks so much. Hi, Max. And thank you. Thank you, Cole. Very kind of you. George, thanks so much. Greetings from Norwich. Great to have you on the stream. Thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Wow, 695 viewers. Wow, that's amazing. Remember to smash the like button, guys. You can also support the channel by becoming a Patreon if you want, and you'll have access to Discord, so do consider that too. Okay, let's hear some of Lord Frost's speech, and unfortunately, it doesn't go very well.
Overall, we constantly face generalised accusations, that we can't be trusted and that we aren't a reasonable international actor.
Okay, we're off to a bad start. So, the British government is not a reasonable actor and they can't be trusted. Well, didn't they say that they were breaking international law in a very limited and specific way? Like, who is at the top of the government? Boris freaking Johnson. Boris Johnson, who has lied to everyone he has met. He's lied to his party, he's lied to the opposition, he's lied to the public, he's lied... And more importantly, or maybe not more importantly, but equally importantly, he lied to the people of Northern Ireland. He went to Northern Ireland last year, he met with the DUP, he met with business leaders, and he told them straight There's no border in the Irish Sea. There will be no border in the Irish Sea. There'll be frictionless trade. And he said that if anyone asks you to fill out a document or a piece of paper, throw it in the bin. Now, when Boris Johnson said that, he said it on a number of occasions, but the last time he said that, his own government were putting in infrastructure to carry out checks. Now, Boris Johnson obviously knew he was lying. It wasn't he was confused or he didn't know or something like that. No, he knew he was lying. And your first, the very first part of your statement here is, people don't trust us. And that's not fair. Wow, Claudio, thanks so much for that super chat. Wow, very kind of you. Claudio says Boris will substitute the EU cohesion funds with Northern Ireland. Sorry, Boris replace the EU cohesion funds of Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales? Absolutely not. Now, the closest there, thanks so much again for that super chat. And welcome to David McGuinness. Great to see you on the stream, David. Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers have said that, don't worry, we're going to replace any funding that you used to receive from the European Union with our own fund from Westminster. Now, the problem with this is it's going to be greatly reduced. I think it was the European Union was sending, was it £100 million to Wales per year to development structural funding, I think it was. That's gone, and it's going to be replaced with £3 million. And that £3 million is not going to be decided by the people in Wales. It's actually going to be decided by Westminster, or more correctly, Westminster's people in Wales. So the government are going to decide, they're going to put people in Wales, and those people in Wales are going to decide how the funds are spent. And how do you think the funds are going to be spent? Do you think it's about levelling up Wales? Do you think they're going to say, okay, let's look at the poorest parts of Wales and, bring them up to a higher standard, higher level? No, of course not. What they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, where is the local Tory MP? Give them money to shore up support for them. That's what I've said always about the difference between political parties or governments and the European Union when it comes to funding. Governments, not all, but the vast majority of them, will spend money in areas to win votes or to shore up their support. That's why they do it. The European Union send money to where it's needed. There's a deprived area, we send money there. Because for the European Union, it doesn't make sense to send money to places that are already rich. It's truly about levelling up. But the Tories' idea of levelling up is, okay, which MPs need support? Okay, pump money into that area, take money away from, for example, constituencies that support the opposition, in order to deprive them more so that they'll eventually turn Tory, and then pump money in there to shore up the MP in the area. Now, the problem with this is that to spend money somewhere, you have to take it from somewhere else. And we've seen this year how the blue wall, the so-called blue wall, the Tory constituencies, are starting to turn against the Tories and vote Liberal Democrat. So a lot of them are not going to vote Labour because that's too far outside the pale for them. But their next port of call would be the Liberal Democrats. And many people in the south or in the richer areas are not too happy about their tax money going to help poorer areas, especially in the north of England. So that money will not be replaced. Or if it is replaced, it will be in a very small way. And there'll be political strings attached, of course. Thanks again for that super chat. David, thanks so much for that. Evening Max, the UK is a bad faith actor. Yes. Thanks. Great to see you on the stream, David. Hope you're well. It's my biggest fear about all of this is what's going to happen in Northern Ireland in the short term. And then I'm concerned also about Scotland, what's going to happen in Scotland in the long term. But in the short term, I'm really concerned about how Frost and Boris Johnson are using Northern Ireland as a political football. They see Northern Ireland as some sort of tool they can use as a bargaining chip, or they can use it as a threat against the European Union. We want a concession. Okay, we're going to invoke Article 16, undermine the peace process, undermine this, undermine that, and lie and cheat and use whatever they can in order to get their way.
So with all this in mind, we can't help taking it with a bit of a pinch of salt when we're told that the EU has stopped thinking about the UK and it is we who are still obsessed with Brexit.
What? The EU wanted to move on from this. You're the one who has the problem with the protocol. The EU have never said we have a problem with the protocol. They said, okay, we have this agreement. Fantastic. Great. Let's sign on it. Let's shake on it. And then we move forward. And then you're the one who came along after and said, oh, no, wait, there's a problem. We can't implement it. Why? Reasons. Not the EU. It's not the EU who are obsessed with Brexit. The EU wanted to move on. The EU wants to forget about Brexit. The reason the EU is still concerned about Brexit is because of Northern Ireland.
Actually, we're not. There is no electoral dividend in endlessly talking about Brexit. It's quite the reverse. That's why.
How many times? Like, we're 25 seconds in, and how many lies has he already told? There's no electoral benefit of talking about Brexit. Boris Johnson banged on about Brexit at every turn, and now it seems it's a sort of double think. Now Boris Johnson, it seems, wants to renegotiate, but also use Brexit again in order to convince voters that they need to vote for the Conservative Party. Brexit is going to be used again, it seems. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure what the spin doctors or the political strategists are up to, but there are rumours that Boris Johnson wants to run on a Brexit ticket again.
The Prime Minister barely mentioned it in his party conference speech last week. What we do see instead is an organisation that doesn't always look like it wants us to succeed. We didn't want it to be like this. We just want friendly relations, free trade, and the chance to do things our own way.
I believe that there is a connection between the British media and the British government. And the British media are used in a way to test the waters, to feel, to check the waters, to check or to test the waters, in a sense to see how the public react to something. So information is leaked to the public through the media, and if the public react in a positive way, then the government will say, okay, let's run with that policy. If the public react in a negative way, then the government say, no, that was just a particular source that isn't backed by the government. It's an intern releasing information to the public. It's not government policy. So it's a fly a flag, test the water. Thanks for that. And it also works in the other way, where the media will try to push policies, and the government will, Boris Johnson's government doesn't really care about, it's not ideological. It's about maintaining some sort of support, maintaining this connection with the public. And they see as the media as a way of doing that. And we've seen it with the whole culture war, where, you have these journalists in the likes of the Daily Mail or the Express or whatever, who are raising issues that are not a real concern with the public, but it creates this, it allows government to use these issues in a way to convince the public that they're important. So we've seen it with statues, we've seen it with the names of buildings, things like that. And you'd have members of parliament standing up and saying, yes, we need to defend Churchill, or we need to make sure that this building maintains its name, or we need to attack those who are tearing down statues. Using it as a political tool to convince the public that they should be concerned about it. DC, again, thanks so much for that super chat. In the next general election, do you think that the SNP might join with Labour to get the Tories out, to get a second referendum in return. I don't see that happening, because I don't see the the Labour Party going along with the second referendum. I think Phil mentioned it when we were speaking during the live stream as well, that I don't see that happening. I don't see the SNP joining with the Labour Party. Now, forming a formal coalition, no. But they may lend support to the Labour Party if they wanted to get the Tories out, for example. Or it may be a case of them working with the Labour Party for some things, but the Labour Party are not going to support, in an official stance, they're not going to support Scottish independence or a second referendum. I think the idea of getting a second referendum is down to the SNP and the Scottish government, with the Green Party. The Labour Party are not going to support it. The Labour Party in Scotland don't support it. The Labour Party in England are not going to support it. And they're not going to... I don't believe that they would put it on the table in order to convince the SNP to join. It's not going to be part of the discussions. I'd be extremely surprised if it did. Thanks for that super chat. Well, we have another one. Thon, thanks so much for that super chat as well. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any. Moderators, let me know if I missed any. Brexiteers want to force the EU to put a border within Ireland to protect the single market. It's blackmail. Yeah, I think they want to do that, or they want to... Maybe it's not even so much about putting a border. They want to undermine the single market. And I think they're using whatever tools they can, because there are two groups, I think, within the government. There are the Brexiteers who are ideological, and there are the Brexiteers who are the opportunists. So I think the Brexiteers who are opportunists would be like Liz Truss, Lord Frost as well, because these are people who never were, fully on board with Brexit. They saw it as a bus to jump on, a bandwagon, to better their career. Lord Frost, I'm pretty sure, did it in order to advance his career. Liz Truss, 100%. Liz Truss used to be a Remainer. She used to deliver speeches, and I covered it on the channel. She delivered a very powerful speech against Brexit, and now she's considered the Brexit Wonder Woman. But there are the ideologues. There are the Steve Bakers. There are the Mark Francois. There are the John Redwoods. These are the people who are ideologues. These people hate Europe, truly hate Europe, and they want to undermine it where possible. I don't know really the motivation why they hate Europe so much, but it's not in order to advance their own careers. It's perhaps it's an old imperial mentality. Anyway, they have a deep hatred of Europe, and they will do whatever they can. They will push wherever they can to undermine the single market. And they don't care the consequences of that. They don't care about peace in Northern Ireland. They never have. They never will. Northern Ireland is of complete indifference to them. And if they can undermine the single market, they'll do that. So they would be happy to throw Northern Ireland under a bus if they believed it undermined the single market. But Brexiteers want to force the EU to put a border to protect. Yes, it is in a sense blackmail, but I don't think it's going to work, because for two reasons. One is the reaction from the European Union. So the reaction from the European Union could be, well, I'm sorry, we're going to have to upgrade the port of Calais. We're going to instruct the French government to upgrade the port of Calais. I'm sorry, we're going to have to close the port for a few weeks during those upgrades. Now, they wouldn't be as blatant as that, but it could happen something like that. Can you imagine if the port of Calais or ports in, connected to Britain where goods flow from the European Union into Britain were closed for a week? I said this on Twitter. The UK would go from being a third country to a third world country in a week. It'd be extremely damaging. Now, I don't know if the European Union would do it that way. That would be a very direct way. But it could create problems for politicians in Britain. Certain products could be limited in their exportation. The EU could tomorrow say these products cannot be exported. And this would create, toilet paper, for example. Most toilet paper is actually imported. So you imagine if tomorrow the European Union said, we have to put a limit on toilet paper because it needs to be recalled or something like that. And this would be a disaster, and this would undermine Boris Johnson because, we've seen what happens with toilet paper. I don't know if it'd be toilet paper, but it could be something. And that could be one way of reacting. Another way of reacting would be the European Union, along with the United States and the Irish government, could say, maybe it's time for a border poll in Northern Ireland. And this could, it could convince a lot of people, maybe we should be part of a united Ireland. Also unionists who see, look what's happening across the water. Yes, we believe ourselves to be British, but look at what's happening in Brexit Britain. I don't want any of that. Look at what the British government is doing to us, throwing us under a bus for political reasons. I don't want any of that either. So I think there are a lot of things can happen. And sadly, we have the wrong people in charge. We have people who have no consideration for Northern Ireland or no consideration for peace on the island of Ireland. And no consideration for their own people. Remember, these are the people who voted to take away food from poor children, make children go hungry. And these are the same people who cut the universal credit uplift, who have pushed hundreds of thousands of people into poverty. Many people who are already in poverty. And I saw or I listened to a podcast with James O'Brien the other day where he was talking to a man. I don't know if you guys had heard it, but he was talking to a man who works for a charity who went out and met people, visited their homes, and he would, he gave the scenario where they were saying that, he went into the house to check on them and they were all wearing coats and jumpers. And he said, why are you dressed up like this? And they say, oh, well, because the boiler isn't working. And he went out and he had a look and the boiler seemed to be working. And then he called his colleague and said, look, we need to fix the boiler. And they said, no, there's no problem with the boiler. There's no money on it. They haven't put credit on their heating system. So they can't afford it. These are the people who are responsible for this. So don't ever think that Boris Johnson or the Brexiteers or the Tories care about Northern Ireland or the people of Northern Ireland. They don't care about the people of Britain. Why would they care about the people of Northern Ireland? I'm really anti-Tory, unless you didn't know. No SNP would join the Labour in Scotland. Don't vote them, says Audrey. That's true. Jerry, thanks so much for that super chat. Boris is the Tory version of Trump. He only has one play. Brexit is done. The shortages are real and permanent. UK hasn't paid the money agreed. Yes, to France. That's true. Thanks so much for that super chat. Oh, we have another one. Just let me know if I miss any. Just a moment. Thanks, Jerry and Thon. We have one from Yoni. Thanks so much, Yoni. EU has offered a 50% easement on post-Brexit checks on British goods to Northern Ireland but in a way that assumes GB does its agreed part with the declarations. I think there's another aspect of this. Thanks, Yoni, for that super chat. I think there's another aspect here that trade is slowing down between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And the EU could say, okay, we're going to reduce the number of checks taking place on goods between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, as a peaceful gesture of goodwill to help the implementation of the protocol. But maybe it's not actually necessary. That not all those checks are necessary. And they could say we're doing this for, to help the protocol. Of course, this is going to be rejected by the British government because they have to keep the red meat red. They need to keep it ready because they need to have something to throw to the base. They need to have this constant war. They're afraid of peace because then they have nothing to fight with. They have nothing to pull out when necessary to distract the public. Claudio, thanks so much for that super chat. Wow, so many super chats tonight. Thanks, guys, so much. The British minister is threatening us with from the EU. It's funny, like a really bad reality show. The Great Lie continues. What is sovereignty in 2021? I think it's all they have left is threats. We're going to invoke Article 16. We've met the threshold of Article 16. All the criteria has been met. But notice they don't invoke Article 16. Because they want to maintain it as a threat. It's like a sort of deterrent. We're never going to use it, but we're going to keep it as a deterrent. And I think that's what they're doing with Article 16. Because surely they understand Article 16 is not going to bring down the protocol. And if you want to invoke Article 16, then you need to have a real reason to do so. But also, invoking Article 16 does not, as I said, suspend the protocol. But it starts the process to resolve the problem that you've highlighted. So first you have to highlight the problem and say, okay, there is this problem. We're going to invoke Article 16. This brings the Joint Committee back together, and then they discuss how to resolve the problem. But the European Union could say, okay, we're going to wait until we're going to let things try and resolve themselves before we start with the Joint Committee, because the Joint Committee, as it's described, joint. It has two parts. It has the UK side and has the European side, and they have to meet. It's not. This is what frustrates me about journalists and the media, is when the likes of Frost and the Brexiteers say, we're going to invoke Article 16. They never actually ask them, what does that entail? Explain to us Article 16. Because the public, I think, are being convinced that Article 16 is like some sort of red button. You press it, boom, something explodes far away, or a problem gets resolved, or the protocol comes to a grinding halt. No, it doesn't do that. It's the opposite. Thanks for that super chat, Claudio. Wow. DC again, thanks so much. Wow, so many super chats tonight. Thanks so much, guys, for the support. I wonder what the end game will be for Gibraltar. Since the UK banned EU ID cards, Spain is now requesting passports to cross the border for Gibraltar residents. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Gibraltar was becoming part of Schengen. There was some sort of agreement. Now, I don't know if that has been put in place yet, or it was just a plan. Unfortunately, I haven't been following Gibraltar very closely, but I was under the impression that Gibraltar was getting a special deal where it would be part of Schengen, and then it wouldn't be necessary for Gibraltarians to have to show their passport when they passed into to Spain. But if that's the case, I presume it's going to be something short term, because unless the deal with Gibraltar has been already scuttled, I'm not sure. Anyway, let's go on with Lord Frost. Thanks so much, guys, for those super chats.
All within the framework of a meaningful and robust Western alliance. With this in mind, I do urge the EU to look at the image that's being presented to us. If there is a trust problem, as we're constantly told there is, it's not the responsibility of only one party. At some point, we must both try to raise our eyes to the horizon, look at the possibilities for better relations, and try to help each other solve problems, not create them.
But who created the problem here? You can't turn around and say, we need to stop creating problems. You're the one who threw the Molotov cocktail, and now you're complaining about the fire and say, we need to work together to stop these fires.
Which brings me to my fifth and final point, and the biggest current problem between us, the Northern Ireland Protocol, is the biggest source of mistrust between us, and for all kinds of reasons, we need to fix this problem. I recognise that's not easy. The history here does matter. I do understand why the EU finds it difficult to come back to an agreement that was reached only 2 years ago.
So, what? I find it difficult how the European Union... Sorry, let me hear what he said again.
Difficult to come back to an agreement. I recognise that's not easy. The history here does matter. I do understand why the EU finds it difficult to come back to an agreement that was reached only 2 years ago.
It's not coming back to an agreement. The agreement is being implemented. It's not something that was signed and then put inside a cupboard and forgotten about. It was being implemented. It was signed. You're going to do this. We're going to do that. We've agreed. Yes, is that okay with you, Lord Frost? Yes, that's okay with me. And now he's saying we're coming back to this agreement?
Though obviously that in itself is far from unusual in international relations. Equally, there's a widespread feeling in the UK that the EU did try to use Northern Ireland to encourage UK political forces to reverse the referendum result, or at least to keep us closely aligned with the EU.
According to whom? The Express? So what he's saying, what he said here is that there is a feeling. Notice he's not actually providing any evidence here. He's not actually saying this is the real situation. No. There's a feeling in the UK that the EU has been using Northern Ireland as a bargaining chip in order to keep Britain part of the European Union. This is the sort of crap that you would read in the Express. The EU is forcing us to stay in, and they're using Northern Ireland. You voted to leave. The European Union said, we'd prefer you didn't leave, but we're going to respect that. Heck, just to give a comparison here, the British government are fighting to stop Scotland from having a referendum. Can you imagine if the European Union had said to Brexiteers, I'm sorry, we're not going to recognise, you can have your referendum, we're not going to recognise it, or we're not even going to allow you to have a referendum. Can you imagine if that was the case? What would Brexiteers be saying? And these are the same Brexiteers who are saying Scotland shouldn't be allowed to have a referendum. Never mind, Scotland should be allowed independence.
And moreover, that the protocol represents a moment of EU overreach when the UK's negotiating hand was tied.
The UK's negotiating hand was tied. You tied your own hand, but obviously your hands were not tied because you never complained during the negotiations that your hands were tied. And also, you are the ones who wanted to end the negotiations as quickly as possible. The EU never said, we need to have these negotiations completed within this time frame. You wanted it done in that time frame. You're the ones who tied your own hands, and now you're blaming some outside force for tying your hands. This guy is a friggin' charlatan and a liar and a crook, because he's gaslighting here. He's saying that yes, we're the ones who are being oppressed here. We're the ones who had our hands tied. We wanted to negotiate in good faith, but the other side were forcing us, or using forces within our country, a fifth column or something, to keep us within the European Union. And they were willing to work with those forces in Britain to use Northern Ireland as a bargaining chip. The EU had said on numerous occasions, look, we need to sort out Northern Ireland. And the response from the Brexiteers is, Northern Ireland is not a problem. And now it's a problem. So who was right? Oh my God. I hear your frustration, Max. Reagan and Lee, thanks so much for that super chat. Hi Frost. Can you explain what the issue is that you agreed to signing up and signed up for? You did read the terms and conditions before signing it, right? Well, his response to this is, yes, we agreed, and yes, it was good, but the EU are interpreting it in a bad way. That's his so he has been prepped for the typical question. Well, you signed it. Why did you sign it if you didn't agree with it? And he said, no. It's things have changed. The environment has changed. Now, I've said on numerous occasions, when the EU was negotiating with the UK the withdrawal agreement, it received input from the Irish government because Ireland was going to be affected by this. Boris Johnson's government rejected any input from Northern Ireland, from Scotland or from Wales. Now, Northern Ireland, in regards to the protocol, of course, is more impacted, but political parties in Northern Ireland, business leaders in Northern Ireland, were not consulted. You can't turn around and say now, yes, we should have taken on board people's opinions, we should have taken on board people's concerns, when in reality you didn't give a crap. You said, no, we're in charge. We're not going to listen to Northern Ireland. We're not going to listen to Scotland, Wales, whatever. So he's saying now that, yeah, the deal was good. I'm not saying the deal was bad. No, it was a very great deal. But the problem is that the landscape has changed. The European Union is interpreting it in a different way. He's a liar and a charlatan. Paul, thanks so much for that super, and thanks again, Reagan Elite. Paul, thanks for that. Frost is putting a match to the blue touch paper. Interesting to hear the EU's response in the coming days. Not the EU, well, haven't heard from the EU yet, and it will be interesting to hear what they have to say. Now, diplomats and politicians in the European Union have reacted quite angrily. Those in Ireland are not too happy about the situation either, because this guy agreed these things, and now he's going back on the agreement, and he's blaming the other side for him going back on the agreement,
and therefore cannot reasonably last in its current form. Whether or not you agree with either of those analyses, the facts on the ground are what matter above all. Maybe there was a world in which the protocol could have worked, more sensitively implemented. But the world has now moved on, and we now face a very serious situation. The protocol is not working. It's completely lost consent in one community in Northern Ireland.
The problem with consent in Northern Ireland is that the Northern Ireland Assembly will be allowed to vote on the protocol in 2024. Now, this was part of... Now, this is something that is very positive for Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland, as I said before, had no input when it came to the actual negotiation of the agreement. Okay, so Northern Ireland having some input in 2024 is a positive thing. But the British government don't want this. They would prefer to crash the protocol now, because what would happen in 2024 is that Northern Ireland would probably, very likely, support the protocol. And then this takes away this tool that and it would be reinforced, because it would be the Northern Ireland Parliament, or the Northern Ireland Assembly, I should say, voting for the protocol. And they would say, yes, we want to maintain the protocol. It would take away this threat that the British government want to use. Now, this could be, and I'm not sure if this is me going out on a limb here, but I think this could be an attempt to push for a border poll. This could be an attempt to convince the public, look, this isn't working. We need to end this protocol. But they know that they can't, because it's part of the withdrawal agreement. And instead, it's going to perhaps push more. As I said, it's in regards to Scotland, I think later down the road, but a border poll could happen much sooner because of the chaos that's taking place in Great Britain. And this could be an attempt to jettison Northern Ireland. Boris Johnson, Lord Frost don't care about Northern Ireland. They would be happy to see it gone. The only advantage of keeping Northern Ireland is that they can use it as some sort of threat against the European Union to extract concessions. I'm not sure what type of concessions they're hoping to extract. As I said before, it could be the ideological ones of undermining the European Union and the single market. But it could be more, we need to keep this threat because it's useful. We don't want to render it obsolete. But it could be part of a long-term goal just to get rid of Northern Ireland. Let Northern Ireland become part of the European Union, and then it will, we can't get blamed for it either. It's not our fault the protocol didn't work. It's the European Union's fault. So if it eventually comes to a state where there's a border poll and Northern Ireland becomes part of a united Ireland, it's nothing to do with Boris Johnson, it's the European Union. And it becomes their problem, not our problem anymore. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into that.
It's not doing the thing it was set up to do, protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. In fact, doing the opposite. It has to change. No one here is expert in Northern Ireland, and we're not asking you to be. We're asking you, the EU, to work with us to help us manage the delicate balance in the Belfast Agreement.
Sorry, I just want to highlight a comment that Chatty Rat said. Business leaders, politicians and community groups in Northern Ireland were consulted. The Government of Ireland met with them and facilitated meetings with the European Union. And on one occasion with the Chancellor Merkel. Yes, it was the Republic of Ireland that were helping political parties in Northern Ireland, not Boris Johnson's government.
Not to disrupt it, to help us reflect the concerns of everyone in Northern Ireland from all sides of the political spectrum, and to make sure the peace process is not undermined.
I try to limit my cynicism, but I still fall back to this point of the Tories are the people who cut recently the universal credit uplift because they don't give a crap about poor people. They don't give a crap about people struggling to make ends meet. The minister, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, was karaoke singing to "I've Had the Time of My Life" on the same day as the universal credit uplift was removed, and hundreds of thousands were pushed deeper into poverty. These are people who voted, not Lord Frost because he's not a member of Parliament, but this party voted to take away free school meals for children who need it. They don't care about British people. They don't care about people in general. They're sociopaths. Why should we believe that you care about Northern Ireland or the peace process? Northern Ireland or the peace process doesn't help Boris Johnson. Why should he care about it? Maybe I'm being overly cynical. Please tell me. I need to keep limits on my own cynicism. But I'm getting to the stage where I just believe these people are sociopaths. They really do not care about anyone but themselves.
The key feature of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is balance between different communities and between their links with the rest of the UK and with the Republic of Ireland. That balance is being shredded by the way this protocol is working. The fundamental difficulty is that we're being asked to run a full-scale external boundary of the EU through the centre of our country.
Then why did you agree to it? It's like, did Lord Frost, are there two Lord Frosts? One who negotiated the deal, and then he disappeared into the ether, and then arrived his clone, and his clone knew nothing about this, and his clone's like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't agree to all of this. Now you're forcing us to run a border down the middle of our country. This is all new to me. You agreed to this. You signed this. You sold this to the British public. Your boss went around Britain with his little plastic oven-ready container. Remember the ridiculous videos we saw of Boris Johnson, in a kitchen wearing his frigging, costume. His costume for every moment. He was dressed as a chef with his oven-ready deal, a lasagna or something in a bloody polystyrene box. Saying, this is the oven-ready deal. This is the solution to all of our problems. And now you're turning around and saying, hey, we didn't know what was contained within it.
To apply EU law without consent in one part of it, and to have any dispute arising from these arrangements settled ultimately in the court of one of the parties. Now,
to give him some credit, they had problems with this before. They said, we're not happy with the ECJ ruling over this part of the protocol. But at the end of the day, they said, okay, we're going to go along with it. Now, in a matter of days, it's become a problem again. Conservator Max, breathe in, 1, 2, 3. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3. Thanks for that medical advice. I need to do some yoga. Thanks, Conservator.
The way this is happening is disrupting ordinary lives, damaging large and small businesses, and causing serious turbulence to the institutions within Northern Ireland.
Sorry to be interrupting every few seconds, but this is a big pile of crap that needs to be cut into smaller pieces of crap to be dealt with. It's not damaging businesses in Northern Ireland. Business in Northern Ireland has improved since Brexit. Now, is it better? Is it good for all businesses? Of course not. Is it a fantastic solution for business? No, it's not. But it's mitigating the damage of Brexit. We shouldn't be comparing Northern Ireland with the Republic of Ireland, or we shouldn't be really comparing Northern Ireland with Northern Ireland before COVID. We should be comparing Northern Ireland with Great Britain. And Northern Ireland is coming out the better because of the protocol. The protocol is protecting it. Now, the political institutions, well, it seems one side has a problem with the political institutions. They are, in reality, what the DUP are doing is they're bringing down the institutions because they're not happy with the protocol. It's not the problem with the institutions. There's a problem with their disagreement with the protocol, and they're using whatever they can to bring. It's like you smashing up your neighbor's car because your car doesn't work, or because you don't like. Actually, no, worse than that. You smashing up your neighbor's car because you smashing the bus because you use the bus and everyone else uses the bus because you don't like the color of, I don't know, your wallpaper. That's what they're doing. They're not happy with the protocol. Something that they decided, they decided the protocol, but they wanted Brexit. And now they're smashing up the agreements that were put in place, the institutions put in place following the Good Friday Agreement. And then, of course, and I hate going on about this, but of course the DUP were against the Good Friday Agreement. So it's a double whammy. You have a party that was against the Good Friday Agreement, who are responsible for implementing the Good Friday Agreement, and now they're walking away from it because of something unrelated to the Good Friday Agreement. Oh my God. No, the LC, thanks so much for that super chat. Just a bribe to Google to push this and get your numbers to 1,000. Yay! Thanks so much for that. Keep it going. Yay! Thanks so much for that. You're great. Wow! 896 viewers. Smash that like button, guys. That's amazing. I don't know. Becoming more and more popular. Maybe it's because of Lord Frost.
I remind you of Burke's words I quoted at the beginning, and I quote again: politics should be adjusted not to human reasonings, but to human nature. People must be governed in a manner agreeable to their temper and disposition.
Like Boris Johnson?
That is why we need to move on from this once and for all, and that simply won't happen without significant change to the existing arrangements. We put forward proposals to fix things in July. They are less than many in Northern Ireland would like to see. They don't sweep away the protocol, they work with the grain of it. They don't require infrastructural checks at the international border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. No one wants this, and we've always opposed it. They keep Irish Sea trade arrangements for goods going into Ireland, and we accept a responsibility to implement EU rules for those goods. They would allow UK and EU standard goods to circulate in Northern Ireland. They protect the EU's single market. But crucially, they would allow goods also to circulate virtually freely between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, something that every other country in the world takes for granted.
I'm not sure what he's trying to get at here, because that's what the current protocol allows. Goods can move from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Well, goods can move from Northern Ireland into Great Britain freely. There's frictionless trade there. And goods can move from the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland. Goods can move from Northern Ireland into the Republic, as long as they are not going to impact the single market. As long as they're not, goods that are restricted.
We're now heading into a crucial few weeks. We await the proposals that are coming tomorrow from Maros Šefčovič and the Commission in response to our ideas. I want to be clear, we'll be really ready to discuss them, whatever they say, and we will obviously consider them seriously, fully, and positively. But I repeat, if we're going to get to a solution, we must collectively deliver significant change. We need the EU to show the same ambition and willingness to tackle the fundamental issues at the heart of the protocol head on.
As Mark Watton says, he wants freedom of movement for goods. You couldn't make it up. Yes, we wanted to end freedom of movement for people because we don't like people. Goods, we love goods. They can move freely. We want freedom of movement for goods, but not people. No, people are bad. Goods are good. Wow, thanks so much for that super chat, Tuscan. Tushan is Tushan. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Thanks so much for that. The EU need to stop doling out concessions as a reward to bullying from London. Thanks so much for that super chat. There are two ways of looking at this. I think it's always important to remember that there are things happening behind the scenes that we're not privy to. And I hope what's happening behind the scenes is not being broadcast to the public, because what's being broadcast to the public is extremely concerning. So there are two ways of looking at it. There could be things happening behind the scenes that are more positive because we're not hearing about them. They could also be worse, but I think the worst would be would be broadcast to the public because it's useful to the Brexiteers. They want to paint the EU in the worst possible light. So I think there could be something happening that we don't know about. But another way of looking at this is the EU is giving concessions. Now, this could be a positive or a negative. I know in your comment it's more negative because it's being bullied. But it could be in a case that they are being bullied, but it's because of Northern Ireland. And I know that, and I'm pretty sure that if Northern Ireland was not an issue, if there was a United Ireland, for example, it took place 20 years ago, and the UK, as in Great Britain, left the European Union, there would be no need for a protocol, and Northern Ireland would not be an issue, and the European Union would be much stricter with Great Britain than they are being with the UK at the moment because of Northern Ireland. They don't want to undermine the Good Friday Agreement. So if there was no Good Friday Agreement, there was no concern about peace in Northern Ireland, I think the EU would take a much stronger line. But on the other hand, I think there are things happening behind the scenes. I hope that's the case. And a lot of this is political posturing. Now, the EU doesn't really engage in political posturing, but the Brexiteers have to, because they have to appear tough. And we've seen recently how Boris Johnson will sign a trade deal with the likes of Australia and give in on everything because he wants to appear tough. He wants, look, I got a great trade deal, a wonderful trade deal in record time, just to sell something to the public. And I think there's always this in the back of the minds of the likes of Frost and Boris Johnson. We have to sell something to the public, continually selling something. And I think this way of appearing tough with the European Union is another way of selling something to the public. Because, look, they haven't torn up the withdrawal agreement yet. They continually say that we need to renegotiate it, we need to invoke Article 16 and stuff like this, but they haven't taken that step to do it, which could mean that they never intend to do it. They just need to pretend that they're going to do it in order to appear tough. Of course, I'm not a mind reader and I can't get into the heads of these people. It'd be probably pretty messy in there anyway. But I think this is all part of a political game. And part of it is to convince the public that they're winning. And it worked with the trade negotiations. They convinced many people in the UK that the Australian trade deal was a success, even though it was the absolute opposite of a success. But the public, I'm not talking about people like ourselves who follow this, but to the average person on the street, Boris Johnson signed a trade deal with Australia. Well, that sounds good. He told us he'd do that after Brexit. He did that. Then that must be a success. The general public don't have the time to get into the details of these things. And they will just consider, well, if Boris Johnson said it's a victory, if the government said it's a victory, then it must be a victory. Thanks for that super chat. I hope I didn't disagree with you too much, but I understand it appears like bullying, and maybe you're right that it is bullying because of Northern Ireland, because the EU is concerned about Northern Ireland. But at the same time, I think there are things happening behind the scenes that we're not privy to.
That's why I'm sharing with the Commission today a new legal text, the text of an amended protocol reflecting the proposals in our command paper and supporting, not undermining, the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And I want to comment briefly on a couple of aspects of this text.
I promise I'm not going to spend the whole time with this.
First of all, the new protocol that we are proposing is forward-looking. The original version was agreed at a time when we didn't know whether there would be a trade agreement between us and the EU.
It wasn't a requirement. There wasn't a... You had the hope, yes, we'll sign this trade deal, we'll sign this agreement, and then we're going to have a trade deal. But it wasn't a requirement. The European Union said at the time, we have to have a withdrawal agreement in order to have a trade deal. The trade deal will happen after. But the trade deal was never a guarantee because you were talking about leaving without a trade deal. The EU were not saying we're going to force you out without a trade deal. The whole point of a trade deal, the whole rhetoric around a trade deal was we could have one or we could not have one. We could leave on WTO rules. It was never a requirement of the European Union. It was, in order to have the trade deal, you needed to have a withdrawal agreement. That was the only requirement.
Many of the most unusual and disproportionate provisions were agreed precisely because we didn't know what the shape of our future trading relationship was going to be. In the face of uncertainty, the original protocol defaulted to excessive rigidity which is now needlessly harming Northern Ireland.
Lies.
We now have a very far-reaching agreement between us in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, one which regulates all aspects of our trade in the future. So it makes sense to situate the new agreement in that new trading context and bring it in line with those arrangements. They are, after all, the most significant signed by each party so far. Second, our proposal looks more like a normal treaty in the way it's governed, with international arbitration instead of a system of EU law ultimately policed in the court of one of the parties.
But Northern Ireland is part of the single market, or has frictionless access to the single market. I'm not sure what your idea would be. Like, the simplest way out of this, and I'm going to cut it off here because it's going to go on too long, but the simplest way out of this would be for the UK as a whole to rejoin the single market and the customs union, and then you don't need to have any checks taking place between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Like, you're trying to fix something that's not broken. You're claiming that it's broken, and you're trying to provide fixes to something, but it's not broken. It's working. It's working, but some people don't like the way it's working. But the people who don't like the way it's working wanted Brexit in the first place. So I promise I'm not going to go on with this. You can find the full video on, I think it's on Sky News. Yes, on Sky News you'll find the full video. I do recommend watching it. And he goes on and on about how it's the EU's fault. We didn't know, well, we knew what we were getting into, but the things changed. We have this new withdrawal agreement, which is going to work. It respects the Good Friday Agreement and stuff like this. It's really empty words. The protocol is working. The protocol doesn't need to be fixed. And I think this is just another attempt to threaten the European Union in order to get some sort of concession. Anyway, let's move on. Actually, you guys deserve a break at that stage, so let's go to a comedy video and then I'll come back with the serious stuff in a moment. Of course, the comedy will be Brexit related.
So, Minister, we're hearing talk of potential shortages this Christmas. Many of our viewers are worried that they won't be able to get hold of what they want to this year. Well, to them, I'd say, don't be. What? Don't worry about it. Look, if Christmas for you is just about getting a specific type of turkey or the latest toy for little Johnny, then I feel sorry for you. So what would you say Christmas is about? Well, it's not about wanting things, is it? I mean, when I was a child, I didn't want anything for Christmas, because I already had everything. But that's not the point. What is the point? Christmas is about spending time with friends and family, playing little games, like, what's that one where you gossip about the Prime Minister's marriages? Oh, charades, right? Or musical chairs. Well, that's a classic, where you put bets on the next cabinet reshuffle. Oh, and of course there's pass the buck. Don't you mean pass the parcel? No, pass the buck, where you have to find the best way not to blame everything on Brexit. How about the game where someone tries to eat something using a knife and fork, but they're wearing loads of clothes and a hat and scarf and gloves? Oh yes, because they can't afford to turn on the heating. Well, that sounds less fun. So you're basically telling people not to worry too much about buying things this year. Oh God, no, they have to go out and buy things. I mean, spend for Queen and country. The economy is depending on it. They just might not be able to buy everything they actually want. That doesn't sound very enticing. You just have to be creative. Can't find a turkey? Try roadkill. High in protein, and you're helping to clean up the environment. What about children's toys? There is talk that some shops might run out of popular ranges such as squishies. Well, if you can't find one of those, simply buy a few stress balls and get your wife to sew them together. Then tell your child that you would have got them a real squishy, but the last one in the shop was snapped up by a Ramona. Problem solved. And you get to win a round of Pass the Buck. Thank you, Minister. Next up, as a...
I love it. Was stolen by a Ramona. Okay. No DLC, thanks so much for that super chat. All this talk of the UK and EU is missing out USA. There'll be no trade deal with the USA unless Good Friday Agreement is honoured. Yeah, and I think, look, there are two ways of looking at this. It could be a case of Boris Johnson has given up on a trade deal with the United States, which is not very good. Or this is just saber rattling once again. When it comes to, we don't really want to get punished by the United States, they'll say, no, we're not actually going to. Once again, I think that a lot of this is what's happening behind the scenes. You know, it could be a case of Boris Johnson getting on the phone to Joe Biden or his administration and saying, look, we're just pretending. We don't really mean it. We're just doing it to keep our supporters happy. We don't have any intention of undermining the Good Friday Agreement. That could be it. Whoa, we have a super, thanks so much, No the Alcy. We have a super chat from Kevin. Thanks so much, Kevin. Wow. Very kind of you. Super flyer. Yay. So let's move on. Thanks so much for that. Back to, well, I'm going to stay a little bit with Brexit. Maybe some positive news, a Brexit benefit. It says here, Irish-French sea connections reach 44 with new Dunkirk terminal. So the Minister for European Affairs, Tom Brown in Ireland, has today inaugurated a new Irish terminal at the French ferry port of Dunkirk, with Ireland-France sea routes rising from 12 before Brexit to 44 now. It has already handled 50,000 freight units, trucks and unaccompanied containers, moving from Rosslare and back as exporters sidestepped the UK land bridge since Brexit took effect on the 1st of January. It's basically sold out with freight lorries, said Minister Byrne. The whole port and the port Nord past the Calais region, the Dunkirk Chamber of Commerce, is behind this to get even more connections to Ireland. We only had 12 direct routes from to France from before Brexit. Now it's 44. We're looking as well next summer towards tourism to get Irish tourists into the region, but also, of course, tourists from northern France, Belgium, Holland, and Germany. They have more direct routes into Ireland too. The importance of Dunkirk has become the latest outworking of Brexit, and reflects the growing need for direct sea routes to and from Ireland, so that the Irish and other EU exporters can sidestep the UK land bridge. This is because the land bridge is now associated with delays and customs formalities. Mr. Byrne said the land bridge was still important as it took less time than average and was important for certain fresh foods. However, he said the sea route from Rosslare to Dunkirk provided lorry drivers with more rest periods. Yeah, so this is something about the it's a Brexit benefit for Ireland. If you're traveling from Ireland and you're traveling across to France using the land bridge, you're going to spend more time driving, and you'll have less rest times. You'll have less rest. But if you're traveling from Ireland to France directly by ferry, then you can rest on the ferry. So drivers will have more rest periods and they'll be able to continue driving more. So it's not going to replace the land bridge completely, of course, because the land bridge is still necessary for quicker freight. but there is a move, of course, away. And this is going to negatively impact, to a certain extent, places like Wales, Holyhead, where there's going to be fewer trucks passing through, and also routes where trucks would normally stop, for snacks or for food or rest and facilities along the way. Simon Carr, thanks so much for that super chat. Frost and the Tories are trying to play victim with the EU to win the hearts and minds of the UK people. Yeah, I agree 100% there, Simon. I think that's part of it. It's an attempt to throw red meat to the base. Look at the mean EU. Isn't it great that we've left? They treat, third countries like crap. They are treating Northern Ireland like crap. They never considered the impact of the protocol. We're trying to undo the damage of the protocol. When I say, if you don't believe me, or if you believe Frost and Boris Johnson, why do they care about Northern Ireland? Why do they care about the people of Northern Ireland when they don't care about the people in their own constituencies? There are constituencies all over England where the Tory MP voted to take away support for people. I've covered it on numerous occasions. More support for people on welfare, more support for people who are disabled and can't work, for young people to get a permanent job, or at least better place in life, a better situation in life. The Tory MPs voted against that in their own constituencies. You had a Tory MP who said, I don't think about Northern Ireland because it's far away. And we're supposed to believe that Frost and Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg and Brandon Lewis care about the people of Northern Ireland. They don't even consider them British. If you don't believe me, if you're from Northern Ireland and you go to London, they'll call you Irish. Even Ian Paisley Jr. is probably called Irish when he's there. Max, I don't need to believe you. I can check. Everybody can. Yes, agree. Do not believe me. Do your own research. And I don't mean that in respect to the pandemic. Look, I want to move on a little bit from Brexit because I talked more than I expected tonight. I want to show you a clip, an interesting clip from our old friend, the government. Sorry, our old friend Rasputin.
The government system for dealing with crises is a disaster, as I wrote in 2019. So, again, I explained all that when I spoke to the MPs. The system was bad for many years before COVID. Me and others put into place work to try and improve the system in 2020 after the first wave. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister, being the joke that he is, has not pushed that work through. Now,
someone's a little bit upset that they were kicked out. The Prime Minister, the joke that he is. Now, we all have a bit of a laugh at Boris Johnson's expense, and we all think, look, anyone who's attacked, the enemy, was it the enemy of my enemy is my friend? But Dominic Cummings is nobody's friend. Dominic Cummings was responsible for having Boris Johnson put in there. Boris Johnson couldn't have done it without Dominic Cummings. And Dominic Cummings knows that. And Dominic Cummings, this is what really pisses me off about Dominic Cummings, is how he has had this sort of road to Damascus experience. Boris Johnson is a horrible individual. Boris Johnson is not a competent leader. And he's had this all of a sudden, Wouldn't it have been useful back in 2019 to say, maybe I shouldn't be backing this guy. Maybe this guy is not the person to run the country. Now, his response, of course, is, I did it because, the alternative was worse. Oh, are we having some buffering problems? Okay. He's saying, the alternative was worse. Jeremy Corbyn was worse. Look, if we look at it today, Jeremy Corbyn would not have done the things Boris Johnson did during the pandemic. Now, in regards to Brexit, I don't know if he would have done anything any better than Boris Johnson. We know Jeremy Corbyn is difficult to define when it comes to Brexit. But look, let's park Brexit for a moment. When it came to the pandemic, Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't have handed out contracts to his friends, wouldn't have handed out contracts to donors of the party. There wouldn't have been this corruption. He would have taken it seriously. He wouldn't have, went to a hospital and told people to take it on the chin, shook hands with people and then went on TV and told people to take it on the chin. He would have actually listened to the scientists. He would, not his brother, I hope, but he would have done a much better job. And you have this Rasputin figure coming back and saying, yeah, I was against it all the time. I was against Boris Johnson from the very beginning. Yeah, I knew I was the voice of reason in the room. I don't buy it for a second. I think he's just another charlatan like his former boss. So staying with Boris Johnson, don't worry, I'm not going to show you a video of Boris Johnson, but it says here, number 10 defends Boris Johnson's holiday in Spain amid energy crisis. So as you know, Boris Johnson is in Spain on holiday again. How many times does Boris Johnson go on holiday? How many times has he been on holiday this year? And can't he holiday in Britain? In case there's an emergency and he can be back in number 10, in a number of hours or in minutes even. No. He goes as far away not as far away as possible, but far away. But it seems, well, anyway, let's see what this has to say. So number 10 has defended Boris Johnson's decision to take a holiday in Spain this week during an energy and supply chain crisis. The response from some of the Tories was, doesn't he deserve a holiday? Yeah. And it was like, yeah, but now is the right time. And they were like, when is the right time? That revealed a lot. I don't remember who it was, but the Tory MP said something like, when is the right time for him to go on holiday? So you're saying that there's going to be a permanent crisis, a permanent state of crisis in the UK because of Brexit, because of the energy crisis, things like this. So you just have to get used to being in a permanent state of crisis because otherwise Boris Johnson can never go on holiday. But struggle to explain why all MPs have been given a week off from Parliament even though the party conference season is over. Prime Minister, is this in order to keep people away from Parliament, in order to stop them criticising Boris Johnson in Parliament? The Prime Minister is staying at a Spanish villa linked to Zach Goldsmith, the wealthy Tory peer and Environment Minister, who's close friends with Carrie Johnson. Do anyone here on the stream have a very, wealthy friend who lets you stay in their villa for the summer for no reason, of course, because they're friends of yours? Anyway, number 10 refused to confirm that Goldsmith was covering the cost of the holiday in Marbella, or to say how the Prime Minister had travelled to Spain with his family. Probably on an RAF plane. Why travel, using regular transport like the serfs. His spokesman insisted Johnson remained in charge. It's better if Boris Johnson is not in charge. I think, what difference does it make if Boris Johnson is in charge or Boris Johnson is not in charge? With no need for Dominic Raab, the Deputy Minister, to stand in for him. The Deputy Prime Minister. It's, don't worry, we're not going to put Dominic Raab in charge. Okay, then that's good. It's better to have Boris Johnson. What does that say about Dominic Raab? That it's better to have Boris Johnson in charge, even though Boris Johnson does nothing. I think everyone understands it's right. It's right. Individuals are able to take a break at a suitable time, he said. But he refused to say how long the holiday had been in the Prime Minister's diary. These things, and that's a very, very valid point. These things are not planned at the spur of the moment. These things are planned in advance. So this was planned during the crisis, because the crisis had been going on for months now. The spokesman said Johnson had taken a call from the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was being updated on the work to address the supply chain problems and high energy prices. Not sure what that's got to do with Modi, but the Prime Minister continues to be in charge, as is always the case, in charge. He said he is in regular contact with ministers and Number 10. He is also continuing to take calls, particularly in the run-up to COP26. Asked who was funding the holiday, Johnson's spokesperson said, "Any declarations that need to be made will be made in the normal way, but I don't have anything to add to that." I wouldn't get into anything on location for security reasons. Yeah, we can't tell you who's paying for this, because then you would know probably where he's staying, and then if you know where he's staying, journalists might go around there and take pictures and show what the place is like. Johnson's last holiday went on holiday in August. Maybe Boris Johnson goes on holiday every month in August to the West Country, but his break was cut short by the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, with the Prime Minister returning to England after one day. I always ask this question. Boris Johnson prefers to be on holiday because Boris Johnson doesn't like working. Then why doesn't he just take the next step and resign? Then he can be on holiday all the time. I've said this about people like Trump, like Berlusconi here in Italy. These people don't like working. They don't like running governments, and they have the resources just to resign and live on an island and drink martinis, from sunrise to sunset. Why don't they do that and just let ordinary people get on with their lives? Let governments have competent people in charge, and these idiots can just live the good life. I'd be very happy for Boris Johnson to go and to Bermuda, Barbados, Cayman Islands or whatever, and just stay there and never be heard of ever again, because he just relaxes on a beach every day. Wouldn't it be wonderful for Britain if Boris Johnson did that? FSM is the dog. Thanks so much for the super chat. So Bozo can WFH, but not us flabs. WFH. Somebody please tell me, what does WFH mean? Pike, don't tell them your name. They'd lose influence and favours in the office, though, Max. Competent government might bring in rules that they wouldn't like, and that's a good point. They crave power. Narcissists only want to become something. They don't want to actually be something. Working from home. Thanks so much, Buxton. Okay. Yeah, so Bozo can work from home, but not us. Yes, exactly. Sorry for that, FSM. I didn't remember the acronym. Yes, work from home. Boris can not even work from home, work from the hotel. Not home. Replace home with hotel. He can work from the hotel. But no, yeah, but wasn't it? Oh my God, Ian Duncan Smith, who wrote an article, and this really pisses me off. Ian Duncan Smith is an MP. Ian Duncan Smith earns at least £80,000 a year. Ian Duncan Smith said that he could live on £5 a day or something like that, which was a lie, of course. And Ian Duncan Smith writes articles for the Daily Mail, or the Mail on Sunday, for the Express, or for the Telegraph. The Telegraph in particular, yes. So he writes articles for newspapers, and he gets paid about between £400 and £500, or up to even £1,000 for some articles. He writes an article, and he gets paid about £400 for that article. And he's complaining about people wanting to stay at home or work from home. Get back into the office. Remember, during World War II, people didn't stay at home. They went into the office. Of course, that was a pile of crap, because a large number of people were evacuated out. Government departments were evacuated out of London to protect them from the bombing during the Blitz. thousands of civil servants were moved out of London. And also, during World War II, you didn't have Wi-Fi, you didn't have internet connections, you didn't have computers. Well, maybe some type of computers, but not like today. A pile of crap. But he writes these articles, and he's paid to write these articles. I love how Max is getting pissed off more. It's not intentional, really. My tolerance for this type of crap is running out. So I wanted to show you. Let's move on. No, I have to. My blood pressure is not high enough yet, so I wanted to. This probably will put me over the edge.
Government.
So I covered related to this today in another video where Steve Barclay, government minister, refused to apologize. And as I said before, apologizing is actually a positive aspect, a positive feature, a positive trait. That should be something that we should encourage in politicians. But it has to be sincere. There's no point, Boris Johnson saying, "I'm sorry if you were offended," or "I'm sorry if you were offended by my words," or whatever. Or if you felt, I don't remember the fake apology. If it's a real apology, that's good, because then we can learn from it and move on. But if these politicians refuse to apologize, then how can they fix the problems that they have created?
COVID mistakes have killed many thousands is one headline. Elderly were just an afterthought is another headline. And this is from a report by some of your colleagues, your own MPs. So you're able to apologise for that, aren't you?
No, I think we followed the scientific advice. Obviously, if there's
that wasn't respectfully, sir. That wasn't the question, Minister. Are you able to apologise?
I know. Well, we need to look at the report as a...
Look, I'm no fan of Nick Ferrari, but from time to time, he's like a stopped clock. From time to time, he's right. These are some moments when he shines. And asking the politician, he didn't ask him to apologise. He said, "Are you capable of apologising?" It's a wonderful framing of the question, because, you can't say, if he said, "Please apologise," he'll say, "No, I don't need to apologise." He'll try and respond to the direct question of apologising. He's saying, "Are you capable of apologising?" Which is a wonderful framing.
To say it's only just come out. We need to ensure that where there are lessons to learn. I don't for a minute.
Might I politely ask you not to say lessons to be learnt again? That's 3 times we've heard lessons will be learnt. I'm just wondering why you find it unable to apologise.
Because we followed the scientific advice we had at the time,
Which
and the
might be
knowledge
flawed,
we
of
had
course.
at that point. The knowledge we had at that point was very different.
I appreciate no one did it deliberately. You all worked damn hard. It would appear in many instances the advice that was flawed. I'm just asking on a human nature. Surely you apologise to my listeners who lost relatives.
Well, I recognise it's devastating, and my heart goes out to any family, any of your listeners where
Minister,
they
what's
lost a
so
loved one.
hard about the word sorry?
Because we followed the scientific advice that we had at the time, Nick, and
I find this,
we moved.
We'll move on in a minute. I mean, there's no point going on with this, Mr. Barclay, but on a human level, as Minister for the Cabinet...
Nick, they're not human. I've come to the conclusion they're not human, because they don't act like humans. Because a normal human would apologize. I'm sorry for the actions I took that were a mistake. I made mistakes. We made mistakes. I'm sorry for that. I want to make amends. I want to fix that. Normal human beings do that. You know who doesn't do that? Sociopaths. And I'm back to this again. They're not capable because they don't care about people. Honestly, they don't care about people. I believe, and once again I'm becoming maybe too cynical in my old age, but I believe everything they did was about protecting their party, protecting their position. Everything Boris Johnson did. Boris Johnson ignoring the pandemic because he thought that, well, if I took it seriously, the public would consider me weak. Look at Trump. He's still popular. He's ignoring he's ignoring the pandemic, and he's still popular. I'm going to emulate that. Then he realized, no, the British people are not like Americans, or Republicans in America, I should say. They actually want us to do something. They want us to take it seriously. And then he's in a position, okay, now what do I do? But it's not about what do I do to help people. It's about what is better for me politically.
At office, you can't apologise to people who lost loved ones.
Well, I'm saying if we followed
clearly you
the
can't.
scientific advice and the knowledge we had at the time, Nick, that was a logical thing to do. But what we're committed to doing for those families...
What you say is, I'm sorry. Look, just say it. You don't actually... Even at this stage, you don't even have to mean it. It would be better if you meant it. But if you say, yeah, we're sorry about all those people who have died. We're sorry for the mistakes that we made. We're trying to resolve that. We're trying to fix that. We're trying to learn from those mistakes. But he won't do that because, well, he's pulled the shortest straw, and he had to go out and explain to the media about this. Priti Patel. Imagine if it was Priti Patel. She'd be saying, the people should be apologizing to me. How many times have I been abused? I grew up and I received abuse. You should be apologizing to me, Nick Ferrari. That would be Priti Patel. The public should be apologizing to the government because of what the government has done. This has been the greatest government of all time. Anyway, no, you can't apologize because it would, for the Tories, for these charlatans, for these elite, these Eton-esque, they don't apologize to the public because they believe the public are beneath them. You don't apologize to the cockroach. You don't apologize to the piece of dirt on the floor. That's how they view the public. The public are a tool. If you break your hammer while you're, hammering a nail in the wall, you don't apologize to the hammer. That's the way they view the public. They're a tool to be used. Of course, we have to remember, not to abuse that situation. We have to work within a framework. We have to work within limits. But at the end of the day, they don't care about the public. As I said, they're sociopaths. And some of them are maybe psychopaths, but sociopaths, they have no concern for people who are not themselves. How can someone who lives in a constituency where there's a food bank go to a food bank and take a picture, get a picture taken at the food bank, claiming how wonderful the food bank is, when they are responsible for the food bank's existence? Dominic Raab, others have gone to food banks without the understanding of this food bank exists because people are in poverty. These people are in poverty because of policies that we've put in place for things that I have voted for. How can you do that? Complete disconnection from reality. They're not scum, they're parasites.
Is having an inquiry, ensuring that we address any issues from that time, but we followed the knowledge that we had at that time.
He's not capable of apologising. The Tories cannot apologise. As I said, it's a demonstration of weakness. Now, there have been some complaints about the Labour Party not apologising for supporting the government in some of these measures. And look, I don't know whether it's a valid response or not, but people are saying, well, the Labour Party are not in power. But I don't think that really cuts it. It's not a game of, well, if we apologise and the Tories don't, then we look weaker. As Nick Ferrari said, on a human level, you should apologise. So I think wherever the Labour Party went along with the government, I think they should say, we're sorry as well because of what happened. Okay, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I just want to show you one. No, there was a... No, I did that one. Just one more story on Brexit, and then we'll finish for tonight before we go. And then I'll show you a funny video again. UK car industry says Brexit rules are denting competitiveness. So cars remain the UK's #1 export, but volatile energy prices and the cost of complying with EU regulations post-Brexit are blunting the industry's competitive advantage, the sector's trade body has said. 9 in 10 firms in the industry told the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, SMMT, that costs measured in time and resources had increased as a result of leaving the European Union, with 60% saying the extra expense for trading with the bloc was a much more significant rise than other export destinations. Mike Hawes, the SMMT chief executive, said the cost of complying with the new regulations has made the UK potentially less competitive compared with other European counterparts. The first few weeks and months were incredibly difficult. There were delays at borders. Some of those were teething problems. Some of those issues were more substantive. Undoubtedly, the industry is facing additional cost and complexity. Costs are which generally have been absorbed to maintain the competitiveness. The SSMT said that regarding such issues, the EU would remain a central trading partner. This is the problem as well. Like, you can't just say, okay, we have a problem with Europe, let's sell somewhere else. But the European Union is the UK's main trading partner. That was why it was so insane to put up barriers. Brexit meant putting up barriers with your nearest trading partner. It made zero sense. That was the ideological aspect of Brexit. We hate the European Union. Let's put up a barrier between us and them. Yeah, but it's going to harm our... No, it's not. Just ignore that. Put your fingers in your ears. Overall vehicle export revenues to all markets reached £27 billion in 2020, even as the COVID pandemic disrupted travel, trade flows and shut down markets across the world. The UK automotive sector as a whole generated a total trade revenue of £74 billion, with more than 80% of British-built cars and more than 60% of light commercial vehicles destined for export. The SMMT hopes for caps on energy prices in recognition to the importance of the new generation of electric cars to the country's climate emergency goals. Production of batteries, for instance, is a capital-intensive energy industry, and it's also an energy-intensive industry. So being regarded as an energy-intensive user would potentially allow us to have greater advantages on caps of energy. The industry has energy efficiency targets in place, though climate change agreements with the Environmental Agency that enable some energy discounts. But Hayes said, we are still disadvantaged compared to some of our European colleagues. Miwoki Takahashi, Nissan's general manager for government affairs, told an SMMT conference on Tuesday that trading agreements between the UK and the EU were crucial and indispensable to sustain our business, which includes the Sunderland manufacturing plant employing 6,000. She added, we want the UK to be an electric vehicle and battery hub. We're looking to localise many components of the battery and EV supply in the UK to comply with the rules of origin and build up trade for the UK and Japan. There is a real concern because of rules of origin that it'll become more and more difficult for UK exporters to export into the EU, manufacturers to export into the EU because of rules of origin. It requires more and more parts to be made in Britain in order to avoid that. But as we said before, we're at the beginning of Brexit. Things are going to get much worse next year. And I don't see Nissan lasting in Sunderland without some sort of government support, which we have already seen. But I don't know how much longer that's going to last. So guys, I want to say thanks to everyone who came on the chat tonight. Thanks you so much for all of your comments. Thanks so much for liking the button, smashing the like button. Scott, thanks so much for that super chat. Working making steel for most UK car plants. We're doing nothing. 2 hours work out of a 12-hour shift. Is that... Wow, Scott, thanks for that information and that super chat. Is that because of the energy, or is that because there's nothing to export? Is that because there's nothing... there's limit... Is because of energy prices have gone up so much, it's no longer cost effective, or is it because there's nothing to sell? Looking forward to next Tuesday, Max. A week long in politics. Yes, it's going to be a very interesting week. Boris Johnson's probably thinking, I shouldn't have taken a holiday. No, he's saying exactly this was the time to have a holiday. What is UBI, Max? Is it good? We should get UBI. Yes, UBI is the way to go. Resolve a lot of problems. I don't know if Scott can hear me. If Scott is still there, but I'm just curious about what's Scott's situation. So sorry to hear that. I'm sure all of us here did our best to stop it. We won't give up on you. If I was in the EU, my first target of retaliation for the UK article invoking Article 16 will be the car imports into the EU. So that could be, that could actually happen. Nothing to produce, Max. My God. I hate being downbeat. I hate being gloomy, but I don't see how this is going to get any better. There's nothing to produce. I hope the only way of somewhat dealing with this is to put pressure, and a lot of these stories don't get into the front page, unfortunately. And there was one I covered yesterday about the steel industry, how they're struggling at the moment. They're trying to get help from the business secretary, and the business secretary is fighting with the chancellor, and the chancellor doesn't want to release cash. These industries need to be protected. It makes sense to support them now, so that in the future they can, you can recover, because you need to have manufacturing. And this is the most insane thing about Brexit, is that Brexiteers said we need to cut ourselves off from the rest of the world. And by doing that, it's created a situation where you can't export anything, you can't produce anything, because you can't import anything. It's been so wrong in so many ways. And we're hearing stories about how Poland, which is not really true, but Brexiteers are trying to inflate it, that Poland is planning to leave the European Union, or there's growing support for leaving the European Union in Poland. Poland would be even worse off, I think, than Britain, because Poland is so connected to Europe with a land border, and there's so much trade between Poland and Germany at the moment. They're deeply connected. And just this idea of, there are more countries that want to leave. Anyone I've struggled to find anyone on the continent here who supports Brexit, because I'd like to ask them, how can you look at what's happening in Britain and say, we want to emulate that? Of course, they say, no, it'll be different for us. Well, I'd love to know how you can make that claim. Anyway, guys, that means government help. Guys, so we're going to have to end the stream now. I just want to, before we finish, we have our one for the road, of course. Thanks so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat. Greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for your continued support. The channel is getting bigger all the time, and there's so many more people on. It gives me the impression that it's making an impact. I hate a lot of this negativity. I hate being a deliverer of gloom and doom, but I think it serves a purpose, because we need to put pressure on people who are in charge. The general public and we saw in the video where there were the people who were waiting for petrol, and they were asked about Brexit, and they were like, I'd still support Brexit. This is the sort of thing we're dealing with, where they'd be sitting in their home without being able to put on their heater, without having food in their cupboard, and they say, I still support Brexit. At what stage will the penny finally drop with them? And I think channels like this maybe are dropping, planting a seed. And when you share the videos around social media, I hope it's planting a seed. You guys are already on board with us. We're on the same side. But I'm sure relatives or co-workers or friends of yours who still think Brexit is a good idea. And it doesn't have to be my videos. It can be Phil or other YouTubers. You can share those videos with them and maybe open a few eyes. Anyway, guys, we're at the end of the stream, so I want to share with you one more video, or one for the road. Hope you enjoy it.
Go, 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 go. 2021 at conference, correspondence, file the phone columns, Tories hitting the mic to celebrate properly, plunging millions into poverty. Michael Gove calls out, you're holding us to account, which we have a great laugh about. He said,
never mind tittle tattle, I'm up my tits, how about a rap battle? Gotta stick together, well, that's class solidarity. Because freedom of press is basically dead. Gotta conserve the powers that be. Let me hear you say, conserve the power. Conserve the power. Conserve the power. You've got to conserve the powers that be.
Boris is a lovable rogue, but Boris is a lovable rogue. Boris is a lovable rogue. He doesn't threaten the powers that be, you see. Straight up racist, that Corbyn. Simple and plain, and a chick spy, so they say.
Tories got man proud. I'm high as a kite and I'm amped. Flip my second home and then claim for the stamp.
Anonymous source at 10 Downing says Boris never lies, no clowning.
We're untouchable. As long as establishment crimes remain unpunishable. Empire atrocities, Hillsborough, Aubrey, Grenfell, Windrush, Bloody Sunday, oldies. We'll throw away the key. Now even the Labour leaders ex-DPP.
Conserve the power. Conserve the power. Conserve the power. We've got to conserve the powers that be.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys. Oh, Thermodynamics. Thanks so much for that super chat. Greatly appreciate. Wow, right there at the end. Thanks you so much for that. Very kind of you. No comment, but some support. Greatly appreciated. So, guys, have a great week. I see you all on Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel, 9 p.m. British summertime, or actually Greenwich Mean Time now. No longer in summertime. You know the time, you know the channel, you know the day. So have a great week, and well, it's going to be quite interesting. Let's see how the European Union respond to Lord Frost, and let's see how things develop. Have a great week. See you soon. And remember, anyone who's on Discord, I'll see you after for the post-stream chat. Take care. Good night, guys.